This is Hardy Brute with another run of Noobs Are Coming. Last time we played Arachna, who had 8 different weapon slots. We unlocked the Worminator and the Succubus. And on my own, I played the Skull to level 5 and the Adept to level 5. Unlocking the Nihil, who's an orbital boss, and the Boom Pereer, who's an explosive boss. We also unlocked RN Jesus, because I got enough luck in one of those runs. But today I'd like to play the Nihil, who gains more damage to void weapons, plus 10 base orbital attack speed, and gaining plus 1 for each kill during the wave. The weapon of choice is the Water Orbit, which isn't an overly impressive weapon. It only does 2 damage, with a scaling of 80%. It's got a fixed amount of 5, and gains an additional amount each time you upgrade it. The cooldown is 4 seconds, while the duration is only 2. But my goal is to get a permanent uptime on the Water Orbit, and to that end, we're going to prioritize the cooldown, then duration, and finally damage at the end. So there's duration in the shop. That is a free gimme. And the rerolls only cost 2, so let's roll until we find duration or cooldown. And we got another duration. So now our uptime is 2.2 seconds, while the cooldown is 4. If that 10% duration had been cooldown instead. So we've got more to gain from the cooldown, and that's why I rank it higher. We've got an upgraded version of the Water Orbit, so now we do an impressive 3 damage, and the amount increased to 6 as well. But nothing else about it has actually changed. Duration and cooldown stayed exactly the same. And for a secondary weapon, I think I'm going to take the Torch. Mainly because the Fire Trade, which gives you 3 elemental, pretty much for free. And the Torch will actually be a vehicle to get our spinning going. We found cooldown in the shop, so the dream is alive. The Water Orbit has built-in knockback, which is both a good and bad thing. It keeps us alive early on, but it's pretty bad for bosses or enemies with lots and lots of HP. The traits on the Water Orbit are also pretty bad. We get even more knockback. The HP regen is nice, but it's not really needed. And the arcane damage doesn't do anything for us. That's why the Fire Trade will be a nice addition to the build, giving us some flat elemental. And let's save our souls by taking the plus 1 elemental. Let's also grab the Torch. The Firebow is another option, but the burn is actually half as much as it is on the Torch. But then again, the burn on the Firebow is twice as fast as what is on the Torch, even though it's half the damage. So I think they may have mislabeled that, because that is pretty wild. But the traits on the bow don't actually benefit us. The ranged only gives us range damage, and the bow gives you a mount, and a mount doesn't do anything for us either. But now that we're scaling elemental damage, the burn is also increasing, as well as our orbit damage, going up to 4, and the flat melee hit from the Torch as well. But you can see we're getting more and more kills, ramping up the speed of our orbit, and this is only the beginning. We got our level 5 upgrade, and I think I'm just going to take the elemental damage here, because we don't actually need that much cooldown and duration to get a permanent effect. Let's also take the XP, because level ups are the main ways to get cooldown and duration. We got the cooldown from the shop, and we found a second Torch, giving us the Fire Trait 2 activation. And now we have a total of plus 3 elemental damage, with the Torch doing 4 flat, with the burn doing double damage, up to 1.6. The orbital damage is increased from 4 to 6, and just with that 4% cooldown, we lost 0.16 seconds. So the duration and cooldown are getting closer and closer. The cooldown doesn't just help the orbit, it also helps the Torch's attack speed as well, which was already pretty fast at 1 second. But unfortunately the duration doesn't have an effect on our burning damage, making it last 10% longer. Now that we have 2 Torches, we can actually ramp up the speed even quicker, but the cooldown and duration still leaves us vulnerable at times. Until we get the build online, we can't really afford to invest too much into defenses, and that's one of the hardest parts of the build. So now we're going to roll for cooldown or duration, and we got some more duration, up to 15%, and let's take the elemental damage as well. We actually have some cash, so let's get the plus 2 HP. Surviving 2 or 3 hits will make the build much less stressful. So none of these. And let's also buy the HP regen. Things that only cost 20, about the same cost of the reroll, are always nice to add to the build. And let's buy the third Torch. giving us fire trait 3 and 2 more elemental damage. So now our torch does 6, with the burn doing 2.8, and the water orbit is up to 8 damage as well. The duration is now 2.3, so we have a 1.54 second window of time to take damage. And let's also lock down the plus 2 HP. And that window is quite a bit smaller than the starting window of 2 seconds, but it's still a bit too long for my liking. But once we get a permanent orbit, we'll be pretty protected, at least from the melee. The ranged enemies could still be a problem. I'm also interested in seeing if the charging enemies, the bosses, can actually make it through our orbs, or if they'll just constantly be hitting a wall. And I don't think our damage is actually going to matter in the end, because our orbs will be spinning so fast, we should just obliterate everything like a buzzsaw that we come close to. And that's what I'm looking forward to most. And we found cooldown in the shop, that's a definite take. And we got an 11% duration, so now we're at 26% duration. Our duration is 2.52, with a cooldown of 3.72, and a new window of 1.2 seconds. We also have a blue water orbit, which increases the damage to 10, the scaling to 100%, but the fixed amount remains at 6. We got a blue torch, and 2 more HP. This was a pretty awesome shop so far. More elemental damage and damage percentage, but less cooldown. We only have 7% cooldown, so even just losing that 1% is pretty big for us. And with a 1.2 second window, we are getting closer and closer. Our defenses are a bit lacking. We can only survive 2 hits from the charging swordsman, who do around 7 damage each hit, and I'll feel a lot better, a lot safer, once we get enough cooldown to eliminate the window completely. And at that point, hopefully we can forget about the melee units and just focus on dodging the ranged stuff. But for a great wave, we didn't really make too much souls in this one, even though I feel like our damage is pretty good. We're gonna end around 150, which isn't terrible, but for me, a good wave is at least 200. That's 7% cheaper items. We don't actually need a mount. And we're looking for just a bit more cooldown. But the green 8% XP will help us get more cooldown in the long run. We've got 2 torches in the shop, so let's buy them both. And we found a grieving soul, which gives us 5% more duration. Which there's only around 2 items I know of that even give duration. We found a blue torch, which does give us more burn damage, but at this point we have max weapons, and we're mainly using them to speed up our orbit, and we're a water orbit build first, so I don't think I'm actually going to buy this blue torch. I'd rather use the money to buy some stats, buy some more cooldown if we can find it, and at some point when we get permanent orbs, I'm actually going to sell all of our torches and test it out just with the orbs and see how that does. And now that we have 5 torches, we have the final trait that attack damage scales off an additional 50% elemental. And when I first played this run, initially I thought that only affected the torches, because that made the most sense to me. And with the same 6 elemental damage, we went from 10 to 13 damage on the water orbit. And with 5% more duration, up to 31%, our window has shrunk to only 1.1 seconds. We're getting very close to the point where the spinning is going so fast that it actually looks like it's slowing down and even lagging at times. And that's when you know you're going very, very fast. I'm pretty confident we'll get enough cooldown, so this time I'm actually going to take the elemental damage. And we got 4% cooldown from the shop, so we are never punished. Plus 1 elemental. We found a lot of elemental damage in this build so far. We're already up to 15, with a window of 0.98. So let's take even more elemental. And I will buy the white torch, just upgrade that to green. And let's start the rolling. More chests, more regen. That'll keep us in the game. Speed is actually a pretty big stat for us as well, because the only way we can do damage is right next to our own body. So we have to charge headfirst into the enemy, especially if we sell all of our torches. But now we have green torches, and I don't think I'm going to bother upgrading them past that. We could get more fire damage and plus 1 elemental, but losing the 2 HP when we only have 13 would definitely end the run. And we'd easily get one shot out of nowhere. But even having enough life to get 2 hit within a wave is still pretty bad, because they last around 60 seconds, and eventually you're going to be hit. So if you don't have some way to heal, or enough life to be taking 3 to 4 hits, you're gonna have a bad time. But we are sacrificing everything for the cooldown dream, and that was a pretty big hit right there. Our HP regen is pretty nice, mainly because we have such a low health pool that there's not much to heal back. So it looks a lot better than it probably actually is. And now we're down to 1 HP. But it's near the end of the wave, and as long as we don't take one more hit, we will be golden. We could take the elemental damage, but I think we have enough of that. Let's get the duration for sure. We now have 36 duration. We could get another attack slot, but we don't really need that, because we're mainly an orbit build that's just not quite online yet. And the water orbit is now up to 16 damage, and our window has shrunk to 0.88. Ideally we want that window to be 0 or less, just in case it can actually be double cast, because that'd be pretty cool as well, because I'm not sure if it's the spinning or the ramping up, but sometimes I see more than 6 orbs going around us, and not just because it's moving so fast. This wave is very dense, and it's also completely melee, so this is going to be the best chance to see how fast we can make our orbs spin. We still have 30 seconds. We've already reached around max speed from previous waves, and now it actually seems like they're slowing down a bit. Ooh, now it looks like it's much slower, but it's actually going even faster now. You can see all the little ticks of 16, 16, 16. And now it's going in super slow motion. This is very cool. It's also the reason I don't think our damage really matters if we spin fast enough. So this is our level 15 upgrade, and they're all purple. And we definitely want the purple cooldown of 7%. And let's also take the elemental damage. The orbit now does 18 damage with a window of 0.6. So let's buy another fire flower. The loss of 1% cooldown shouldn't hurt us in the long run. And we got a Grieving Ghost for 5% more duration, plus 2 HP. And we found another Grieving Ghost. We found so much duration in this run, we're already at 41. And our window is only 0.54 seconds. We only have a half-second window, where the melee can even get in and damage us. So this build is looking better and better. Wave 10 is also a pretty decent wave for density and cash. It's also mainly melee as well. When we sell the torches, I'm not quite sure how we're going to deal with the toads, but as of right now, the burn actually does quite a bit of damage, doing 12.5 per tick. We found a lot of elemental damage in the run, a little bit of cooldown, a lot of duration, and just a little bit of health. We're definitely less tanky than we should be at this point in the game. We've got a lot of other stats that we're trying to prioritize. The water orbit also has a second ability that it can water the plants, but we're not actually playing with any plants, and I'm actually going to do a plant build in the next run or two. But I think there's a lot better ways to water the plants other than this orbit here. Let's take another fire flower, we'll lose 1% more cooldown, and let's lower the enemy's speed. Let's take the cooldown, so we gain 2% overall. Let's get the Grieving Soul for 5% more duration, and the plus 2 HP as well. And the speed. Speed is going to help us a lot later on. And 2 more HPs. So let's lock the 6 and take the 4. With 18% cooldown and 46% duration, our window is now only 0.36. So it's less than half a second. And with a very long duration, if the weapon does stack, meaning it casts more than once, then it'll have a greater effect having all that duration as well. And that'd be pretty cool. This is definitely one of the harder stages, mainly because there's so much ranged arrows to dodge around, and because we have to run at all of our enemies. But luckily we have around 10% speed, so we can go a bit faster, but that also means we can go a bit faster head first into the arrows. We only have around 3 HP regen, but without that HP regen, we definitely would have already lost the game, because our build is definitely a glass cannon, And this is more of a melee build than any other melee build I've done so far. Because oftentimes when you build melee, you can also add on range, and you can still be pretty safe. With our spider, we were launching fists across the screen. And we survived with 3 HP. Let's get a bit more HP and give us a bit more cushion. These are all random. But let's get the 10% XP, 4 more level ups. We still have 8 more waves till the end. Let's definitely buy the 6 HP. And now we should be able to survive 3 to 4 hits before the end. And none of these, so let's move on. The previous wave was just awful for surviving, as well as for soul income. But wave 12 is the opposite of that. Lots and lots of melee, with a very high density. So we should be able to get a very good spin going here, as well as make some income to get some stats that we really want. But the knockback, which was a benefit early on, is now becoming a bit annoying, pushing the enemies around, pushing them away from us. But I guess the alternative is to let them through our protective barrier and come straight for our life, which we don't have a lot of life. So I guess the alternative is just death. So I wish there was a middle ground between those two choices. There's also no items in the game that really lower or remove knockback, which would be nice to add to the game. But with our main limit being our speed and getting to the enemy, we still made around 270, 280 souls here. So we got a purple luck or an 8% duration, and we actually got an unlock for 50% duration. And our window is only 0.2 now, so it's getting smaller and smaller. Plus 2 HP, and let's get the XP as well. Another grieving soul. That's gonna be our 4th one, with 59 total duration. Let's luck down the 6 HP, and the window has shrunk to just 0.1. So we either need 5% more duration, or any sort of cooldown, and it'll push us over the edge. But our duration is already at 59, and I think the cooldown cap's at 60%. So I'm not sure if there's a cap for duration, but this game does have quite a few caps. The magical mushroom man is pretty bad for us, because we have to avoid his line in the sand, and still get close enough to actually take him out. So our build does have some downfalls, just because the game's not really designed to be completely melee like this. We're already down to 5 HP. And if the Mushroom Man chooses, he could end our run at any time. So I'm going to try to avoid him as much as I can, not take any more damage. But 1 HP is plenty of HP. Hopefully this is the last wave of completely ranged enemies. We got the purple level 20 upgrade. I definitely want cooldown or duration, but the +3 elemental is very tempting. And we're so close, I don't think we actually need the cooldown or duration, so let's take the damage. Let's get the 6 HP, and we found our 5th grieving soul, making our duration and cooldown exactly the same. So now the window is 0. We also have 27 damage on our orbit now, from all of our elemental damage. The duration can actually go above 60. We're currently at 64, and our orbiting balls will last forever. So this is very, very cool. This is also the last round that I think I'm going to play with the torches. Round 15 is against the first boss, and I want to test out the orbs against the boss and see how it does. It could end the run, it could be terrible. But we are an orbit build, so we gotta test out the orbits. And the game also had a patch in the 1.0 update, which added another orbital boss, who doesn't scale orbit speed, but has a flat 80 to start with. And for beating a game with him, he unlocks his own orbit weapon, the Barbar, which scales off of Arcane and Amount. So I definitely want to check that out and see how it compares to the water orbit, because the water orbit is a lot of fun, but it's actually pretty hard to use early on, especially because it's a unique weapon and you can only have one of them. And the laser eyes was another weapon they were supposed to change in relation to the orbit, so instead of being in a fixed location, I imagine it now rotates around your character with orbital speed. So let's sell all of our torches here, It is going to reduce the damage on our orbit, but let's see how it does against the boss. The orbit is also affected by size, so let's get the 10% size and see if that makes any sort of difference. And we're fighting the stack noob, so he's a melee that charges at us, which shouldn't be so bad as long as we can ramp up our speed enough. But I'm already noticing a bit of an issue. It is harder for us to ramp up, get that initial speed going, but we are slowly building up the speed, and the knockback is actually pretty nice now. It's our only form of defense. If we weren't melee before, we're definitely melee now. I also think I'm going to buy back some of the torches, at least one or two, because the issue isn't the loss of damage, but the fact that it takes us too long to actually ramp up. Right now we have a very good nice speed, we can actually fight the enemy, but we lost a lot of life and time to get to this point. And now that we have plenty of duration and cooldown, we can actually shift our focus back to defenses, and that might actually be enough to push us over the edge. Because at the moment, we have to play pretty safe to stay alive. Let's take the elemental damage, giving us 12 now. And we found a green torch in the shop right away. I think just this one torch is going to make a huge difference. Let's get the cooldown, just in case the orbs can activate twice. We now have a window of 0.16, where there could be 2 sets of orbs. And now we're doing 17 damage up from 16. Let's see how we do when we have 1 torch back, and we don't have the boss chasing us around the entire time. But there are a lot of shamans in this level, and a lot of ranged units. So there's lots of stuff to dodge. We're already down to 4 HP, and we got the rogue chasing behind us, which has a ton of speed. But I'm not sure he can actually get past our orb wall. And we're slowly starting to ramp up, faster and faster. We're actually making little circles with our bodies as well, grouping the enemies in the middle, circling around them bit by bit, and feeding them to these saw blades. But even though we can only survive 1 hit, we've got the orbs going so fast they're in slow motion again. This build feels incredibly strong, and very, very weak at the exact same time. It really just depends on what kind of enemies we're fighting. The build should be a bit more fluid when we get another torch back, giving us the fire trait 1 again. So we gain 1 more elemental, and let's roll. +2 elemental, +2% armor, less duration. I think we can still maintain our window even if we take this. The duration is 3.18 and the cooldown is 3.12, because we found a lot of extra duration in this run. And now that we have 2 torches, we can scale even faster, and the water orbit and a bit of damage going up to 21 now. The best test for this build is going to be wave 19. I think it's the most dense wave, and most of the enemies are actually melee, so we can feel pretty safe behind our spinning balls. This wave has a lot of the mushroom men, which are very, very dangerous for us, because we have to get close to them, and we can't actually predict where their attack is going to go. Whether it spawns in our face, or we walk over it by accident, we're gonna take some damage here. The enemy type will respond as soon as you take it out, so sometimes it's better just to leave these guys in the corner and avoid them completely, so they don't just spawn in front of us and do damage immediately. But our health regen has been doing work, and now we can take up to 2 hits before we get taken out. The biggest issue with the build is it's hard for us to clear the room, hard for us to generate souls, so we're not really buying too many stats or improving round from round. But let's get the flat elemental. That'll give us a bit more damage. And let's also get the free reroll, and use the reroll to buy a bit more duration, and then we're already out of souls, so we barely improved there. We still have a blue water orbit as well, even though the purple really wouldn't make too much of a difference. I think the scaling would go up 10%, and we might actually have a 7th orb in there, but I'm not even sure about that. But I don't think the number of orbs would actually make all that much difference in the build, especially when we start getting our speed to max. Every single orb is hitting the enemy as fast as it can, and even the chargers can't get past. But I think I found the best method to use this weapon, making little circles with our own body, while the circles themselves circle our body. so we can kind of group them in the middle, slowly chip them away, and it actually keeps us alive longer too. Although that's not the case when there becomes so much range on the screen at the same time. But you can also look at our body and see the torches themselves rotating around us very quickly, but that doesn't actually affect their attack pattern at all, so it's more of a visual effect. There's only a handful of weapons that are actually affected by orbit at this point. I don't want to lose damage for HP. I will take some more cooldown. Room size could keep us alive, but I'd rather have these souls. This item only gives us 2 HP, so I think the 14 souls is much better. We actually have duration and cooldown in the shop. Our window is negative 0.38, so we might as well take the cooldown, and maybe we can do a double cast as well, every half second or so. Let's take the HP regen and try to survive, as well as the cheaper rerolls. We can actually only afford to reroll once here. But we got 2 max HPs. I don't think I'm gonna lock those though. And let's move on. Wave 19 is the best wave of the game, so hopefully we can get at least 300 to 400 souls. Oftentimes you can get 6 to maybe even 1,000. But this is also going to be the best wave, the best test to see how fast we can spin. And we don't actually need the torches too much here. We started ramping up all on our own. But now we're having a strobe-like effect. And we're still going faster and faster here. We get +1 orbit speed per kill. And now we're going into slow motion. And more than half the time is actually gone. I wonder if there's an orbit cap, or if we get enough orbit speed that we start going super fast again. That'd be pretty cool. But this wave would have been much better without the mushroom men. We could have just charged around and done pretty much anything we wanted. But now we have to avoid all the red lines on the ground and play a bit more cautiously. We got down to 1 hit at the end and made around 400 souls. More chest, well that doesn't help us in the final wave. Same with XP. I think I will take the +4 regen though, because that'll keep us in it. And let's also take the elemental damage and the armor. We've got a lot of extra cooldown now, so the 5 less duration isn't going to affect us. And let's also take the +6 HP, because we keep getting down to 1 hit. This is the final reroll, and we didn't get anything good. So let's go fight the boss, and see what kind of boss we're actually fighting. And we're fighting the worst boss, the triple boss. Which usually I like quite a bit, but especially with the healer here, I'm not sure we're actually going to be able to take one out. But let's actually spend the first 30 seconds ramping up our speed, going as fast as we possibly can, and then seeing if we can burst down the boss. Because if we can take them out before she heals, it doesn't even matter. And there's around 3 stages of our speed. Right now we're into stage 1 with the very fast, and now we're moving into stage 2 with the strobe-like effect. And when it starts going slow motion, that's around stage 3. So I think we've reached maximum speed now. So let's chase down the healer. We're doing quite a bit. Her heal's also pretty huge, around 500. And the main issue is that even when we get her in the corner, she just sort of bounces out. But you can see the white bar filling up larger and larger, and going down around a quarter every time she heals. But we are doing pretty good damage to her. We even got her to half health. We just didn't have enough time. That is very sad. Our water orbit was up to 23 damage, with a window of -0.4. You've got 29 cooldown and 62 duration. I think they could improve this weapon by having it shoot out and expand every few seconds or so. It'd also be a lot better for watering as well. We got 2 unlocks during the run. For having a 50% duration, we unlocked the unique Mastering, +1 synergy level granted for the associated effects. So we just get +1 trait in everything we're using. And this item is perfect for Athena, who benefits from more cooldown for every different type of weapon she uses. For beating level 5 with the current boss, we got the Health Investment. Lowers your health by 50%, but each wave afterwards gives you 2 max HP. So this is a very similar item to Brotato, and I love this item. It's just kind of a set it and forget it. So I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to support me, please leave a like or subscribe. And next time I'm either going to be playing the bomb boss or the plant boss. So I will see you later.